Welcome back. Week 2 with Coach Dave Worland. Hopefully you had a chance to watch Coach Worland's words of wisdom last week and get to know him a bit. But Coach Worland has been a lifelong educator, a lifelong coach, and a lifelong leader, and a wonderful child of God. And how he's represented and modeled has earned him the respect of everyone who's been blessed across his path. And Coach Worland, God bless you, my friend. It's great to see you. And thank you again for being here.
Oh, it's great to be back, and anytime I can visit and talk education and coaching and faith, that's my top priority. I love it.
Thank you, Coach. I know you enjoy talking about being a grandparent, and that's where we wrapped up last weekend. I'd like to start there again because you were talking about what you've learned from watching your son-in-law be a father, and I certainly relate. And I guess I never stepped back to think about how my sons, my wife and I have 2 sons, how they would be as parents. But they have been so blessed with the wives they've been fortunate to meet and God's brought into their life. And to your point last week, my wife and I talk all the time. We just enjoy when we're at events, sitting back and watching them parent the grandkids and watching that result. But the patience they have, the love they have, and the way they meet their children where they are is fascinating to me. And I have learned so much, not only from them. I tell people all the time, I get the most growth from my grandchildren. And listening to you last week, because in my mind, I'm putting around, how do I explain that further? But last week, your explanation on being a grandfather and a grandparent hit me really. What and where I get my gain from my grandchildren is simply this. Our purpose is to love God and love people. And then Jesus challenges us before he returns to heaven to not only love God and love people, but to love as he has loved us. And I get that from my grandchildren every day, every moment with it. They just love. And it's so simple, just love. And wow, that's been a big impact to me.
Oh, yeah. And the great thing is now we're able to meet like friends of our grandchildren, and we're able to broaden that base, even though they're our grandkids. But what I got to do during that time that I've been able to take 2 of my grandchildren to school, because we live way east of where my daughter and her husband live. So now I get to take my grandkids. My Courtney's, my daughter's, Dad, you don't have to take the grandkids. We'll figure a way. I said, no, it's a blessing for me. I want to take them. Please let me take them. But then I go to their preschool and their grade schools. I meet all these other little kids. It's just a bit of heaven during that time, because I work with high school kids. That's what I've done my whole life, which that niche and what I like, that age group, 15 to 18 or 19. Those are the kids that I seem to relate with the best. But the little kids, I'm just amazed. And so I get to see them. So it's not just my 6 grandkids I get to see. They're usually hanging out with their cousins, or they're hanging out with their friends. So it just multiplies as you start to see these little guys and little gals do their thing.
Well said. And you probably the same way. Back in the day, 3 or 4 decades ago, I had to be there 30 minutes before everybody else, right? Had to show up on time. But if I'm needed to pick up my grandkids early, I'll leave work early. Hey, that's okay, guys. If I got to reschedule a meeting, don't worry about it. It's funny the change that happens.
Oh, it is. It's all of a sudden priorities are a little different, aren't they? It's
Yes,
like when
they
we
are.
were younger, it was like, oh no, I got to be at the meeting, or I got to be at practice, or I got to be at to open the doors at school. I got to be there to lock the doors up or whatever. I probably didn't have to way back then, but I felt that was my responsibility. I probably took it on too much, but you're so true. Today, it's, oh, one of the grandkids has a soccer game and it's at 5:30, but I've got some event. Guess what? I'm not going to the event. I'm going to the soccer game. My grandkids playing.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, last week you were so patient, so gracious in introducing yourself, and you talked about individuals who had impacted you. You mentioned Ms. Wagner, Coach Beverly in that piece. Who else has really played a key part in Dave Worland's life, not just professional career, but in the development of Dave Worland?
I'm going to fast forward to, because I did talk a little bit before about grade school and high school. But when I got my first job was at Washington Catholic. Sister Joseph Louise was my principal. And she was tough. She was tough in that she knew I was young. I don't think she knew I was as dumb as I was. Sometimes you're young and dumb. That's why I call myself, because I thought I knew everything back then. I thought I had all the answers. I was pretty cocky at that time when I got my first job, and excited at the same time. but she knew me well enough and she wanted to mentor me. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I just knew she hired me. She interviewed me, hired me and said, here's your books, here's your job. I'm here to help you if you want me. I got 48 other people I'm supervising, so good luck and God bless you. But that really was it. I think inside she was like, I want to help this guy. I want to watch him. I want to follow him because I was an athletic director and a basketball coach. So I was doing that double duty and still teaching 5 classes with 5 different preps, which I loved it. I wanted to do all that. But I'll never forget back in that time period in the early 80s, there were cell phones and I had a cell phone, but it's about as big as my shoulders. It was like huge and you couldn't miss it. They had that big cell phone, but I'd be talking to ADs about scheduling games and all that. I was in a business class and I took that huge cell phone from my athletic office up to the classroom where I was teaching, and sister walked in and she saw I'm talking on this phone. And this was early in my tenure at Washington Catholic. And she was really professional. Mr. Worland, we got class going on, kids are there and all that fun stuff. And so I said, oh yeah, I'll finish this call, hung it up. After the class, I went down for a little prep time. She came down and let me know, I won't go through all the details, but that was the last time I took a cell phone in the classroom to do double work when we got academics going on in class. So she did it in a loving way, but a stern way. And then I'll fast forward with her. I mean, she was the best that I could ever had as a principal, my first job, because we were very fortunate at Washington Catholic one year. We won a lot of games. That's one of the goals, obviously, but there's a lot more important things than winning games, but we won a lot of games. So we were able to get some awards, and I was invited to be a speaker at the Indiana Basketball. No, it was the Indiana Basketball Coaches Association. It's a really cool deal where guys speak and a bunch of coaches go, and I'd been there as coaches. So I was like, I'm going to go. I can't wait. Sister went with me. She said, can I go with you? She says, I'll prepare your handouts. I'll pass out your handouts. I'll be there for you. So here was my mentor kicking my rear to tell me how to teach and how to be professional and what education's all about. In those first 4 years, I can give you 25 other details. We don't have time. But at the end of my tenure there, when I was celebrating the successes of our team in front of my peers, which was a big deal, sister wanted to be there. She wanted to see that because she wanted to see that success paid off. And she was my assistant. She just wanted to pass out, run off flyers. She didn't even want to be known to be there, but she wanted to feel the energy of what was going on. So sister was amazing. And I still kept in touch with her. She's now gone to God, but even after I left, she and I stayed close.
For sharing that. What a great example. Last week, you talked about being a lifelong learner, and I want to back up to that, especially for leaders today, whether it's in education, manufacturing, any walk of life or career or family that one has. I think sometimes as humans, and maybe it's natural that we think, you know what, learning comes when I read a book, learning comes, which it does, when I attend a webinar, a conference, or I take a class, or I seek out a degree. But the reality is, just to your example there, and I remember those long cell phones in those pieces, or even, the 1970 detective shows, Barnaby Jones and Cannon, they had car phones. I still remember those long wires. But where I was going is, you just gave a great example. Every opportunity we have to interact, whether we're speaking or listening, whether it's one-on-one or we're one of hundreds or thousands, it's an opportunity to learn in life.
Absolutely. And the more you can get in a comfort zone with other people, especially other people that are not like you. We talked last week about some of the coaches gatherings where we'd all let our hair down and talk about stories, and we all had a fraternity of coaches. Okay, let's get out of the fraternity of coaches thing. And now let's get around people that aren't coaches, so to speak, or they're different ages, or they're different careers, or they have different interests, and be able to blend with them. And may not know anything about what they're doing in their life, but I'm learning, I'm listening. God gave us 2 eyes and 2 ears, and he wants us to see, and he wants us to hear, and he gave us 1 mouth. So we got to keep that thing shut quite a bit so that we don't think it's about us, because it's not about us. It's about learning and being able to pass that learning on to others. And that's the greatest part of, and I'm a people person. I love being around people. I want to be around people. And again, and I probably was intimidated when I was younger because if I didn't know as much as they knew, then I felt uncomfortable and I'm like, oh gosh, you don't think I'm very good and all that. But now if I don't know something, then I'm going to learn it. And then I'm not going to learn like they might be, but I'm going to be a little bit better. So as long as I can be in an area where I can be around people, and that's why it's in the high schools that I've been in my whole career, I've been working in high schools, you get that because you get all kinds of different subjects. You get parents that are older than you, at least back in the day. And then you get students I love high school students because they can still be persuaded, informed, and being able to change. They may not agree with you, but I always love that age group because they're really listening. And so I want to be able to give them all I got. And I think that's the part that keeps me going even today. After 44 years of education, I still love being in schools. And that's because I'm around all kinds of people. If I was in a little cocoon and I'd sit in my rocking chair and stay home and get up at 7 and then hang out till I go to bed at 9, I don't think I'd last very long.
Coach said, thank you for sharing that. And I know a topic, and I want to pick up and come back and talk to you and get your insight on pace of life, if you will. And let me just build on that a little bit, a lot from personal experiences. When it comes to stumbling and staying in God's way through life, I'm not sure there's anybody that can beat my track record. I'm so blessed sitting here with you today that God's allowed me the maturation. But this phase of life in our 60s, mid to late 60s, there's no fog on why things occurred the way they did. And typically, when they didn't go as far as I thought they would at that time of the day, I was the one in the way type thing in that setting. And you talked about learning to help others learn. And you see the title of my background still in that regard. And what I believe through my life is success hasn't come to me because of me. It's come to me because of the people around me. And significance has come for us as a team when that pace was just still, not stopped. Psalm 46:10, be still and know I am God. But the acrostic for still is simply serve, transform, influence, lead, and love. And for me, many times I feel short because, yeah, I was serving, maybe working late or taking on duties to help others get home, but I wasn't serving myself to the point that I was developing myself to raise my value, which would raise the value I bring to others. So when I reflect back, and I'm curious from your perspective, your experiences in this regard, the greatest success myself and teams ever had around me, family or professional, was when still was fully plugged together and just working in fluid motion.
Yeah. Yeah, said that's inspiring to me because we grow as we get older and we learn because I'm a different person today than I was when I was in my 20s. Probably because I've always been blessed to be in a lot of different leadership roles. I'd have to say in my younger years, I probably thought I was more important than the people I were leading. I thought it was important to coach. I wanted the end goal was the same. We all wanted the good things to happen to everybody. But today, or the last half of my life, I 100% believe it's the others that are important. It's not me. And so part of that's the maturation of age, and you start to understand better. The good Lord gives us that aha moment at some point in our careers and our life that you don't need big titles. You don't need fancy, impressive signs to say who you are and what's your goal, how many people you supervise and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But what does matter is the way you approach. If you're going to be a leader, and that's a lot of what we're talking about here, you got to have somebody to lead. And people aren't going to want to follow you if you're more about you, meaning me, if I'm the leader, than it is about the receiver, which are all the people we influence. And it could be anybody. It could be a classroom of Spanish students. It could be, I supervise a bunch of kiddos. It's called Champions Together. It's a Special Olympics group, which I love. I mean, I'm passionate about Special Olympics and that. I wouldn't get anybody showing up for our meetings if it was more about what I wanted and it was going to be this way or the highway, they'd be like, sorry, Mr. Worland, we're going down the hallway. We're going to go somewhere else. So I think that's the part of it that we learn. Like I said, now some people in our lives that we interact with, they figured it out long before I did. That took a while. It took me some time to get my bearings, and I had to get a lot of stumbles and bumbles and jumping over hurdles to finally figure it out. But I think, and that's okay. That's why in our faith that you can go to confession and you make mistakes, and as long as you're willing to you try not to make them again. And if you hurt someone, that you apologize and you try to make up for those bad decisions that you made. And I always think it's important. Mistakes are one thing. I make 100 mistakes a day. I can live with them. And there might be one or two of them I really regret and I wish I didn't do it. But some of them are just bad curveballs that come your way. I had an older brother, Terry, who died 7 years ago. I had no control over that. Terry had an aneurysm and he died. And it was the worst time in my life, but it wasn't a mistake. It was just life. Those things happen. In the middle of my principalship here at Cathedral High School, I had 2 students take their life within a month. And that was the hardest time for me as an administrator. It wasn't a mistake I made. It was something that I didn't want to happen. And I grieved over it. And we grieved as a school, but we did, by the grace of God, move on. The families, the friends, the institution. We didn't shut school down for the rest of the year. We took the grace of those 2 students at 2 different times, and it was like within, like I said, a month, we sadly, in a certain way, and gladly in another way, learned that those things happen in our world. Let's don't let that happen to the next student in our school, or the student that's across the street from us, or the student across the country from us. What can we do to energize them or give them the strength to not make a decision that's going to be hurtful to them and others?
God bless you for being there for the students and the student body in all those aspects. But before I take us to the next topic, you mentioned Champions Together, and I just want to recognize you were for a number of years on the board of control, executive board of the Indiana High School Athletic Association that oversees all the athletics. But during the tenure of Bobby Cox, who was commissioner of the IHSA, and then I had an opportunity as a building principal and superintendent in 3 different schools to work very closely with Lee Lonzo, who basically took Bobby Cox's vision, the board of control's vision, the IHSA's vision, and really had a great success. But Bobby Cox and Lee Lonzo, 2 outstanding individuals for that program. And wow, when you talk about God and impacting lives, Champions Together has been tremendous in the state of Indiana.
Oh, and I've been very fortunate to just see it grow. Because Kevin, you're right. It started as just the vision. It was a Bobby Cox vision that Lee Lonzo and Bobby worked together at Carmel High School, and they brought that out. You mentioned Lee Lonzo. Because we were a non-public school, we are a non-public school here at Cathedral, we didn't have any students that would qualify as special education, but we had a lot of students. So Lee Lonzo flew me out to Arizona to a school that was a non-public school that did something similar. And then he flew me back all on his dime because he wanted to see this non-public schools have Champions Together, because we didn't have it at the start of it. You had to have a school that had special needs or special education kids in your building. A lot of the schools don't that are non-public. He went beyond expectations because that wasn't in the playbook. The part that Lee took me on and I took others on, and now all the non-public schools have Champions Together. That didn't happen in any other state in the union. That was a Lee Lonzo, Bobby Cox. Let's figure this out. If you're in the IHSA, then you need to have the opportunity to have Champions Together. We are blessed here in Indiana and in that group. And I got to see some of it firsthand because I was on the board. I was very fortunate to be able to see it in action. And then now that I'm off the board, I retired off the board, I get to see those things just continue to grow. They just add more sports to the limits, and they give more students who now are braver to say, you know what, I think I will do that Champions Together flag football. They didn't want to do it as a freshman, but now as a senior, okay, I'm going to stick my toe in the water and I'm going to try it. So I just see that just multiplying, and it's as exciting, maybe more exciting than state championships with the IHSA, because you're seeing more. And then the best part of that is when I see the students that are in the IHSA sports out there clapping and cheering and excited to see the track race when they see these champions together, Special Olympics students battle for first place.
You summed it up very well. And in my lifetime, I'm not sure that I've seen anything more impactful in our state, maybe in our country, than what, bless their vision, Bobby Cox and Lee Lonzo, has happened with Champions Together in the state of Indiana. And I would encourage anyone to go to Google and just Google Champions Together in that regard and learn about it and talk. If you're in the state of Indiana, call your principals, go talk to them and get their input. But just fantastic. So thank you for sharing that and bringing that up a moment ago. Coach, you've talked about lessons learned, and we're speaking to leaders and coaches and educators. If you were to give one piece of advice for individuals in that early part of their careers from what you've learned and take away that you think could help them moving forward, what would that be?
I would say listen and learn from others. I think that's been so special for me. And again, it's not easy sometimes because everybody has their own way they want to do things, and that's their way. But I know from my experience, I've done a whole flip on some of my attitudes on the way to teach, the way to coach, the way to influence, the way to lead, because I listened. The way I had wasn't bad, it wasn't horrible, but I needed to know what other avenues were out there. And if I didn't listen, then I wasn't going to learn what those avenues were. And I think that has transformed my ability to get some influence because I'm willing, and thank God that I was able to pick up those things, because sometimes it's subtle. It's things that people say or do. If you're not paying attention, you don't get it. But then you say, why is it that so is such a good track coach or a math teacher, whatever? It's not on a playbook. You can't, books are great. You said that earlier. Read, I'm all for reading. I'm a proponent of reading. But those are the things you don't get in a book. You got to watch, you got to follow. Now, you don't have to be 100% like them because you got to be yourself, but take all these opportunities to pick a little bit of a nugget from this person and a little bit from that person and say, I like that part. I don't like those things, but I like the way he handles things under pressure, or I like the way she has composure when kids are not behaving properly or whatever. So that would be my number one takeaway. I think it's so important. And I still do it today. I still do it. I still learn. I'll see something going on and I'm like, whoa, that is so good. That is so neat. I want to share that with, maybe it's just my wife, but it might be someone that's a teacher or coach that I'm mentoring here. And I think we're in a position now in the latter part of our career that we can do some good, because if someone does want to know a little bit more about your craft or about what's going on, you don't just have to give them what I did 35 years ago. That may be outdated, but if I stayed with it, I can help that 21-year-old teacher who wants to be an English teacher. I'm not going to tell them how I taught 21 years or 30 years ago, because it's probably not relevant anymore. But what I've listened to and what I've learned is relevant. And then I can throw in some of that history with it that might be helpful too.
Dave Worland, the grandfather, the coach, the mentor, the leader. What's next for you, my friend, when it comes to that next step in the journey of lifelong learning?
Yeah, I'm probably another year or two in what I'm doing here at Cathedral because I love it. But I got one more gig in my mind. I don't even know what it is. I don't know what it is, Kevin. But I think God's blessed me with really good health, and I'm going to pray that I can continue to be healthy. I try to stay in good shape, and I try to do all the things, working out and all that. So when my grandkids get a little older and they want to go fishing or they want to go wrestle me in the yard, I can get down on the ground and get back up without a cane. I don't know what that is, but I know it's going to be something that I'm going to give back to education. Education has been good to me for 44 years. I've been an educator all those years. coach, educator, and all that. And before that, I was a student in college and high school and elementary school. So education's my gig. So somewhere I'm going to be able to, and I don't want anybody to take this wrong, but I got no legacy right now. I don't feel it's like there's something when I'm gone, someone will say, oh, that Worland guy, he was, well, this, or he was that, or he was the lead of something. I'm not. I've learned a lot and I've done it. But in my last years, I want to go somewhere, volunteer. The pay part's going to be out of the picture. And I want to help build something that's needed. Now, it doesn't mean build a building. I'm talking about maybe it's a curriculum or maybe it's something that needs helped. I want to do that. And the next time I see you, I'll maybe know what that is. I know it's there. I think the good Lord's telling me it's my next phase of life. And when I figure out what that is and I get the message, then I need to take action because that'll be my last chapter until I probably am in my rocking chair somewhere waiting to see what I can do to help. But right now I can help by driving and moving and doing things. And then maybe another 20 years, I may have to be seated.
What a great model you are, my friend, in that piece, and so much wisdom and so humble and service not only to God, but to education in that window of a great career. How can someone find you or reach out if they've got questions or just want to get to know Dave Worland a bit more?
Oh, they like Google Cathedral High School, and I'm one of the 112 people who work here. So there's a staff that gives all that information. But if they're watching this and they get a good memory or they want to write it down, dworland@gocathedral.com. That's my email address, dworland, all one word, at gocathedral.com. And my phone number, 317-538-0279. You can text on that number. You can call that number. I welcome anybody just wants any information. Now, if they want me to cut their grass or something like that, I may not be able to help, but if it's advice on something, I'll call you back. I'll text you back. I'll email you back, but just don't ask me to do too much physical because I'm probably not as strong as I once was.
I get that. I've never been talented with the hands piece, but I do want to recognize one thing. You're the first guest I've had in a year and a half on the show on Leadership Synergized that's on the injured reserve list in that piece. Recently had a rotator cuff. If anyone has noticed these past 2 weeks, Coach Worland is recovering from rotator cuff surgery, and it did not happen in preparation for Leadership Synergized.
It did not. I don't even know what it did, but I think what the surgeon said when it started to hurt me about a year ago, and I finally said to go to surgery, he said, Dave, it probably happened when you were like a teenager or in your 20s. And it's just now coming to fruition, whatever that tear was, you're getting old and frail and it's starting to hurt you a little bit.
Coach Worland, thank you so much. And one thing that I will add, anyone who wants to reach out to Coach Worland, you get years of wisdom, experiences, positive, and he'll share the lessons learned. But more than anything, you get a mentor and a friend that's there. And Coach Worland, your humbleness is just fantastic, your humility. And again, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you helping with our show, and God bless you, my friend.
Thanks for thinking of me and inviting me. And ever since you gave me the invitation, I was excited about being on your broadcast. So blessings to you. And I show that down the road, your Leadership Synergized is doing wonderfully well.
I appreciate those kind words, and we'll be back in touch. There's some other topics I'd like to have you be a part of in the future in that piece that we're planning. And thank you again, Coach Dave Worland. Thank you all for watching Coach Worland the past 2 weeks and joining Leadership Synergized, whether it's video or audio. Just remember, success doesn't come when we're in a hurry. Success comes when we take a breath, we're still, and we're serving others, we're influencing others, we're transforming their lives, and we're raising value through leadership and love. God bless you for all you do. Have a great day.